I grew up in 8 by 10 room with 8 siblings. My dad has 42 children. My mother has 8 children. So I got to learn very quickly the values of our culture. It is actually because of my mother that Alaffia exists today. Think about it. You have these children, and I'm 6'4", and I have brothers who are bigger than me. So even as a child, we were eating quite a bit. And what she would do, she would take some of our food and then she would give to other community members. So what I'm trying to say is that the value of communityship and sharing, it doesn't matter even if you have so little, but give it to those that need it the most. At the heart of all of these, what I come to understand is the lack of economic stability in our families. It was quite difficult for us to do even the most basic things. Even myself dropped out of school at 6th grade. But at the end of the day, I learned that my culture is very important, and everything that I have learned as a child somehow become the fabric of what Alaffia is today.
Awesome. I'm live here with Olowo-n'djo Tchala, co-founder of Alaffia. It's awesome to have you here today, Olowo-n'djo.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, John. Good morning.
Good morning to me, but good evening to you. You're calling in from Ghana?
Yeah, it is evening. It's about 6 p.m. Here in GMT time, and I'm right now in Accra, so right in Ghana.
Amazing. Amazing. How much of the year do you spend there versus in the States? Or are you mostly there?
No, I actually really depends. In the past few months, I've been coming pretty much every single month. So my journey is between Washington State, Olympia, or Seattle, and then either is in Ghana or Togo. So in the past few months, it's been every month that I've gone back and forth. But before then, I'll come once a quarter. So for the past 20 years since the birth of Alaffia, I just been journeying back and forth, and it's wherever the mission required me to be, and sometimes more needed in the States than being West Africa. But what I do know that's important is to be on the ground where the source of the ingredients are.
Very cool. And how did you end up in Washington as your sort of your home base?
That's a long story. That's a long story. You should have told me that we needed 10 hours.
That's
We need a whole we need a whole week. No, it
because you
it's quite.
mentioned when we were offline that you went to college in UC Davis. So I'm curious how you went all the up to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I have to say I certainly like Pacific Northwest. But John, these are long part. As you know, I come from Togo. Togo is just right next to Ghana, very small country, one of the smallest countries in the world. Uh, and back in 1996, I met my partner, Prairie Rose Hyde, and Rose is from the Eastern Washington state, called Hillbillies Town. Um, and so she was in Togo as a Peace Corps. So by 1998, you know how it is. You're a young man. There's a young pretty lady. Things get complicated quite quickly, and by the time you know it, I went to the state when she finished her Peace Corps service, and Rose was in doing agricultural service in my village at the time of Kaboli, which is a bordering town to Benin. But when I went to the city, I only had 6th grade education, so I had to go back to school to learn. First, I had to learn English because Togo was colonized by the French, so I had to learn English. And I went to community college to learn English. By that time, around 1998, Rose wanted to go to grad school that in UC Davis. So I ended up going to Woodland Community College and Sacramento City Community College before transferring to UC Davis. By 2003, fast forward, we had children, and then Davis was too expensive and unbearable to have these. So at the time, to us, and to this, I have to say, even to this day, I see Alaffia as a revolutionary based enterprise. Is about making change. It's not about just making money. So we needed to move to somewhere where we could afford to pay rent and take care of our babies. And literally, we jump on I-5, drive north, got to Eugene. Okay, that seemed like a small enough town. And then keep driving, got to Portland, too big. And it went past Portland and then got to Vancouver. Well, too close to Portland. And just keep going and got to Olympia. Okay, That's like small enough town, safe for the children. They went, we got mobile home that was about, I think, $500. Okay, that's a lot cheaper than Davis. Let's move. So I went back, turned my papers in. A week later, we moved to Olympia, Washington, in the mobile home and making a Lafayette product. So we end up there for two reasons. One, a place that's safe, we felt, for to raise children, and also a place that was cheap enough for us, being the new pioneers who want to make change in the world, and the community that we felt that was geared toward caring about the world and care about the environment and so on and so forth. So that's how we end up in Pacific Northwest, and it's part of my home, even though I come to West Africa quite often.
Mm, wow. So it sounds like what led you there was really love.
Yeah, yeah. Well, love, love can take a man very far away lands. And survival, right? Yes, you
Yeah.
have to survive. Yeah,
So you meet Rose, you follow her to Davis, you kind of, you go there, you do your education, and then you kind of move to Washington to find a place that was a little bit more socially conscious, and a good community, safe community. But and I guess, we're this is a little bit of a or different start than I usually do. Usually I just ask the person to introduce themselves, but I like this so far. And you mentioned that you are already creating a Alaffia product. So I guess, when was Alaffia born? Were you already creating those products when you were down in California, or did it just? Yeah. So where did that? How did Alaffia come to be?
yes. Thank you, John. The Alafia had birth in Davis, and we were actually in the student subsidized housing. You know how in the student housing you have family housing. So, given our level of income, we were in student subsidized housing, and being me, I wanted to go tell the university that we start these enterprises. So the university kicked us out. They say you can't have a private business on university property because that's government property. So and really, being in school, being in Davis, it was a year before we moved. It was 2004 that we moved to Olympia, Washington. So 2003, that's when Alafia was founded, and this was around May of 2003. And at that time, I still have 1 year left to finish to finish at UC Davis, but it goes into the core of what about what is Alafia then, because I felt there was an urgent need in our communities. I saw it as a very critical and urgent. And I felt that the way in which I grew up in Togo, in the villages, seeing the kind of suffering that we all endure. I grew up in 8 by 10 room with 8 siblings. My dad has 42 children. My mother has 8 children, and my mother herself was an indentured servant in neighboring countries. So I got to learn very quickly what women endure in Togo, but I also learned the values of our culture. So fast forward and going to US, is
Wait,
recognizing that
let's
what am I
double
going
click.
to do?
Could we double click when you say values of our culture? You mentioned 42 brothers and sisters, 8 children. What were the values that you appreciated, and then what was stuff that you were just like, this isn't? Yeah, what did you agree with and align with? What did you?
You know, John, I think that evaluation is continuous. But I can tell you, outside of my mother, because I was thinking my mother has the greatest influence, and I said it is actually because of my mother that Lafayette exists today, because of the values that she instilled in us, and that those values people often talk about Africa, right, as a community, and I live it. It's true, and I'm speaking to you from Africa. At that time, for my mother, think about it. And you have these children, and I'm 6'4", and I have brothers who are bigger than me. So even as a child, we were eating quite a bit. And what she would do, she would take some of our food and then she would give to other community members. So what I'm trying to say is that the value of communityship And sharing, it doesn't matter even if you have so little, but give it to those that need it the most. And so what my mother was doing that, because my village, Kabole, was a border town to Benin. If you go into Nigeria, and there's a lot of human trafficking, and it still happens today. You go through my town and you get to Benin and you go to Nigeria. So she would take our food for those traveling and being trafficked and give to them. So of course, as a young boy, you're not happy that your food is being taken because you have so little already. But at the same time, back in my mind, I'm saying that we're sharing with strangers. So the idea of community really sank into my head. And when it comes to women matters, my mother was, as I said, was an indentured servant. Her parents died when she was a baby and was raised by some of her distant cousins in neighboring country. And in exchange, she did all the work at home and was never sent to school. So I got very close to understand really the struggle of women. And another thing that I learned is that my mother thought that the herbs and our colors and the way of life that is close to the ground is a way that we are to be so we can remain healthy. So this idea of being proud of your culture and your colors was also embedded in us. But the reality, I think, is we just couldn't afford anything that was Western anyway. So our clothes were made locally. The food was made. In fact, I didn't even use forks until right before I went to America. We ate out of clay pots. Everything I cooked with was made from from local. Our clothes were indigos, the old days before you would make jeans. So that was I think those to me were some positive side, right? And other things I see that were not so positive is that in Togo, at least in my village, in my family at the time, there's a practice called FGM, female genital mutilation. I was that boy that would hold a bucket of water that you bring when the woman is being cut. So I witnessed that at 7, 6 years old. And so I don't, certainly nobody in the world, and I did not think that was the right thing to do. And it's not good cultural value to have because you go against somebody's will and it has a great risk. And you see that one of the things that Alaffia does, maternal care, there's a reason for it. It's very touching to my soul when it comes to that. But and also learn that the some of our men in the community, and I want to be very careful with these because I don't want it to be misconstrued. I did not think the gender equality aspects, given the way you can imagine being in 40 children. It gets things get complicated, and I don't think all the women
Of
had the
course.
voice that they ought to have. That my father has multiple wives, so that gender aspect was very something that at least when I looked at my mother and how she dealt with it. I felt that's something that we need to adjust. I'm not judging the culture in that perspective, but I don't think it makes the families function. But at the heart of all of these, what I have come to understand is the lack of economic stability in our families. That it was quite difficult for us to do even the most basic things. Even myself dropped out of school at sixth grade, and all of it's because of lack of basic economic activity. But at the end of the day, I learned that my culture is very important. Yeah, it's not perfect, and also I learned that within my culture there are knowledge that actually is also a foundation of Alaffia. That within our culture we know how to do certain things without polluting the world and destroying our environment. And so I think those everything that I have learned as a child or have witnessed somehow become the fabric of what Lafayette is today.
So a lot of influence from your culture, and but I guess on the product side, when you started in 2003, 2004, how did you decide that we're going to do body care, soap? And was it still body care and soap that you guys were doing? How has the product evolved since then?
Yes, thank you, John. It's really evolved naturally, and it wasn't one of those things that how these days you say, okay, I want to start an organization. You go to venture capitalists and however it is, and they give you money and they put so-called strategic plan together. Nothing was strategic to me. The world is unjust, and we got to change that period. And the question is, if you believe the world is unjust and your people are not being treated fairly, all your resources have been stolen from you. And then you have to do something. That's why I wanted to do something. So it's the question is was what will work and what can I do? Remember, we're students, and what we could do has to be within our reach. So we use student loans, and we went and borrow additional $50,000 from the bank, which they refused to lend to us because they said that we didn't have collateral. And I tell you, John, that was the first time that I learned that you actually have to be rich to borrow money. I thought poor people borrow money, but no, you actually have to have money in America to borrow money. But anyway, what I'm trying to drive to, it was the question really come, what is feasible? And what was feasible is to do something that the community has, right? The aspect of dignity was really important to me. And that is, what can our people do? What can a woman like my mother back home do without going to school, so on and so forth? And it really come down to looking again back into the culture. Shea trees grow across the savannah of West Africa. We know how to make shea butter. That's a cultural knowledge. And I just thought, why not do that? America wants natural product, and we know how to do it. And the price that's paid to the people is not fair. And so let's just pay fair prices, organize the woman, sell it to America. What I was after is what I call investing forward. I needed the capital to invest in social initiatives for the future, but I couldn't get the money to invest in it. For kids like myself to not be able to drop out of school, you need to invest in education. But you can't really do that unless you can generate income. So that's kind of the process, and that was okay. If we can make shea butter, which automatically falls within the body care, even though 98% of all the shea butter made in the world is used for chocolate as a substitute. But the 2%, to me, it makes sense that we don't need too much money to do this. We already have the knowledge base, and we can bring it to America and honestly just literally pour into the jar and take it to a co-op. And there you go. You don't have to learn how to make lotion or shampoo yet. Those came later. They just pour in the jar and it goes to street fairs, and then from there, one store at a time. And then by the time we got to Olympia, Rose went to the local library. You know how library used to be some 18, 19 years ago. You get a book on how to make lotion, and then you mix it together at a certain temperature, and there goes your lotion.
It's it's honestly amazing how you went from such an small artisanal product with this big, positive mission of like really rather than like being like, oh, people are uh looking for natural products in the bathroom, so I'm going to create a natural product with an ingredient from my country. It was alongside of like I want to create social change because of my roots and because of where I came from, and this is a vehicle for creating and igniting this change. And then 20 years later, you're in all the Whole Foods. Can you give us a little high level as to like where you were and then where the brand is today, kind of economically, global presence, and then also where you are from an impact perspective?
Definitely. I'll try to remember all of that, John. I'm getting moving all these soap and lotion. You get old very quickly, and the mission wears you down, right? So I try to remember all of
Old
that.
but clean,
That's right.
but clean and smell good.
with, with a good conscience, and my conscience and souls appear. I can tell you that. No, when I said I will move to a mobile home in Olympia, it is true, and you can imagine what you can produce in a mobile home. And at that time, I was still go to, I would go to the street fairs to sell the product. And Bumper Shoot, you know that in Seattle. And then we went to local co-op, our local co-op would fill the jars. We didn't even have the UPCs, right? And the co-op would say, you got to scan these things. So we always have to go figure out what the UPC is. And then local co-ops start carrying it. We went to the Marlene's Market, which are Federal Way, just north of Olympia, Washington, south of Seattle. And then slowly we got to Portland, and there's New Season Market. And New Season Market at the time had 5 stores. So I'm trying to give you the scale here, right? So to go from street fairs to the co-ops, and then have a chain of stores that have five. I can remember uh, packing the orders, and because how big of deal that was. To see 3 or 4 boxes that you're packing, because Rose will make the product and I'll pack the product. So when new season really came about, I think to be, I felt, oh, we're more than one location, when more than one state. So we got to go. We got to go more. And I put a goal. I put a goal to myself and said, okay, I had been 1,000 stores, and by 2008, that's when we went national. In 2008, if you remember, that's when the banks were failing. There was major banks were failing. It was global recession, and that was just really 4 or 5 years after our session. So the idea, one thing I promised my mother when I told my mother we're going to start Alaffia, she said, "Look, um, we're already poor, but we're respected in the community. But if you fail, then we can be dishonored, and that's not acceptable. So you cannot fail." So I always thought from the day one there was no failure, because I cannot, in no way or no shape, tell my mother that I failed. Um, she's a lovely woman, but there's certain things that you just cannot do. So in my mind, I got to do something. If the U.S. economy is collapsing, I cannot go back home and tell the woman that there's no job for them, because that was the key, is to provide that job. So we went to Whole Food and to the Whole Food, and look, you can make money, but I'll keep the jobs available for the woman back home. And what we're going to do, at that time, the 32-ounce lotion in Whole Food, that's not fair trade, is about $18. So I told Whole Food, you can sell at $9.99, because the economy and these are simple things, really, if you think about it in economics. Economy is bad. People don't want to spend money. So you provide something that is reasonable. But what it was the key here is that you provide something that's still clean and ethical at the price that Americans can feel that was okay. So it makes sense. So hopefully say yes, let's do it. 32 ounce, I make my money, and then it's clean and it's ethical, and that's pretty much how we went national in 2008. And from there, we keep on building, and we're over 2,600 stores today, in Targets, as well as CVS and Rite Aids, and we'll continue to expand, because our expansion is a function of our community impact, because it is a direct derivative of our expansion that goes to invest forward. Uh, and I think the second part of the question, I said I'm going to ask you to remind me, but do you even remember yourself, John? Do you-
I honestly don't. That's the issue with me whenever I ask multiple questions wrapped into one. Do you remember? Oh, I think it was where is the brand? So you gave us an idea of where it is in terms of footprint.
Yeah.
Where is the brand in terms of impact?
Yes, thank you. I think the impact is in two ways, right? We can start the state side. On the state side, it's true that we're coming from West Africa, and that we're ingredients are based out of West Africa, but we also make product. The finished product are made in the U.S. So create American jobs, and getting local packaging within the West Coast is very important. But the other impact that I think is even more important is providing an alternative product to American people that does not force them to commit crime. What do I mean by that? There's a tremendous amount of crime committed in the supply chain. That's where the fair trade and the ethical process come into play. So if you can provide a product to a family that just wants to have their soap and just have the life just like any family around the world have enough to deal with. But if you're buying a product that whoever is selling the product to you did not treat people with good manners in the process of making that product, and indirectly you become a process of contributing to that crime. So I think that being at Alaffia and what Alaffia does in the US, offering products that are ethical is a good way to engage with people, and again, them not contributing. If that makes sense, what I'm trying to say, not unconsciously, really. But the real impact when we step back, come back here in West Africa, if you look into our community investment, and I said earlier, the reason to found Alaffia was to invest forward into the community. because I believe that the source of our poverty and gender inequalities within the sub-Saharan Africa is the lack of future investment into our society. And today we have given more than 11,000 bicycles that come from California all the way to Oregon and Seattle area that we distribute to young
Bicycles?
girls bicycle. Yeah, we don't collect bicycles even in Berkeley. We used to collect bicycles in Berkeley in the parking lot of Whole Foods, and we'll ship them all the way to Togo. And today we have more than 11,000 bicycles because the dropout rate is about 40% in the rural communities. If by the time you reach secondary school, if you're a young woman, if you have a bicycle, we have a 95% retention simply by having bicycles to go to school because you don't have to
What?
walk 5 or 10 miles a day.
Oh. Oh, wow. So one of the main forms of impact is giving bicycles. Yeah, I've seen that on your bottles of soap, that bicycles. So the bicycles lead people to lead women to staying in schools.
Definitely, definitely, and we keep track of everything that we have done, and with Alaffia and until this day, uh, I think the best way to truly measure an impact in a community is keep track of it over time. That's when you can see the changes in the community. In addition to the bicycles, we also build schools. Today we have 17 schools that we have built already. And even more importantly, I mentioned maternal care earlier. We have more than 8,000 women today that we have paid for their safe birth. One in 16 women would die in sub-Saharan Africa simply trying to give birth to a child. And the problem here is that when you have women that die, then the other children left behind will drop out of school. And if they drop out, and the cycle of poverty continues. So if we want our children, then we want to break the cycle of poverty, then we need to keep our women alive. And also, it's immoral, really, to have women die simply because trying to give life. And I told you too that it's somewhat personal to me. I lost sisters simply because we didn't have $2 to buy antibiotics after they have birth and infection. So I feel that it's an area that's so critical uh, to our society. But one thing that you see in all these various community initiatives, there's really two elements. You have the economic element, right? That is giving jobs that are relevant to our society today based on our traditional knowledge. And then the other part is when you're investing in the community, what drivers are we investing in, right? There's health and education and environment, and we'll plant trees as well. And I don't think that so-called doing good in the world is simply doing one thing. You got to look at the community and see what are the drivers that I need to be driven. So that we can move forward, and clearly, economics has consciousness and investment in a different aspect that's critical to the community. And that's what Lafi does. And that's what we have done for all these 20 years is to ensure that we combine those two. And that's essentially the model for Lafi too. That is the model. Is to combine those two worlds.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you with two questions again. How do you decide? They're related. How do you decide on how much to give to these initiatives? And I guess on the flips, on the related to that is like what kind of challenges have you faced in maintaining those values and that commitment to ethical and ethics and sustainability as you've grown the business?
Thank you. I mean, those challenges are definitely ongoing challenges. And one thing that we have done, and I'll answer your question, is for the great majority of our journey is to never take an outside investment. I actually used to not have a board until 2.5 years ago. You know, I believe that I have always believed that banks are bad, and I want to say the truth to what I believe. So, taking outside investment, we have taken minority investment recently, but before then, up until 2 years ago, we have no outside capital. Every single thing that came to the organization was to expand the organization and to invest in our social initiative. It was very clear. But now, how do we decide on how we invest in the society? It starts with the collecting the ingredient from the ground first. When we collect, let's say we collect shea nuts, the Alaffia price that we pay for that shea nut before we turn into shea butter must be 15% more than the local market price. So, and that's goes into our fair trade principle. It's not the norm, but that's what I believe that we are to do in our community. We have set our principles. We have what they call field officers, and today we have 14,000 cooperative members in West Africa that will collect the nuts or whatever it might be. So that's just kind of on the supply side. 14,000, yes, yeah. Those are direct members. Yes,
And
yeah,
so they're not
definitely.
full-time employees. They are members and you pay them for the product that they collect.
Exactly, and then but we also do have about 1,000 full-time members all the time that are making they're making coconut oil or making shea butter or making black soap. Those are happening around the clock, and the members are seasonal, but it's a key source of their income, very key source of their income. And those that's what we call it direct. Those are direct, and those co-ops are divided in some 8,000. So it's some of them are very small groups that we need to really to manage. But now, how do we decide in terms of a percentage? And that 15% is a similar in making the decision to pay 15% for the raw materials before you make it into shea butter, for instance. So any ingredients, let's say we take black soap, which is a more semi-finished product before it goes to America, 15% of the cost of that will have to come back into the community, and that's how that's decided on, and it's almost like a linear. It doesn't matter what happened to the cost activities in the US, oil price change or not change, that number does not change, and it has not changed from the birth since Davis. And I think those principles, what I call core principles, should not and under any circumstances change, because again, the question is, why are we here? What are we doing for? And the reason why we do it, yes, we can reevaluate how we do it, but the commitment to contribute to it should not become the back burner or secondary. And Alaffia cannot be that we're doing this because it's good for marketing. I don't. To me, that would not fulfill my soul, and I would not engage or participate. I think we are to do things that fulfill our souls, the things that we believe that actually really matters. If it's good for the marketing, yes, even for the better, then you're not lying. You're telling the truth. We have to do it because it's the right thing to do. So that's how we decide on in terms of the percentage. The challenges, that's what's one of the questions. And I think the challenges are extremely enormous because you have to continuously say truth to what you believe, even though you know what it is, because not everybody will see what you see. You have to always be up to the date on what's going on in the marketplace so that you can stay relevant. Because the truth of the
Yeah.
matter is, doing good in the world doesn't mean that you can be on the shelf. You got to perform, and you got to know what the consumers want and when they want it, and they have to supply the product. And there's the challenges on
It
the supply side. Everybody knows, right? That in West Africa, we have extremely corrupt government, and I'm not gonna lie about it. We have corrupt government, and corrupt governments. If you think about this, John, I'm promising, raise my hand, right, that we are the most ethical enterprise. And then I'm literally working with institutions and processes are the most unethical. So if you can try to imagine that, the corruption levels are tremendous. But that's not easy.
Are you ever worried about your safety?
I do. I worry about my safety is a major concern, but I also have come to believe that I will give my life to Alaffia. That's this journey. I have settled on that. So I don't lose sleep over it the way I used to. And this my safety is primarily because the many institutions and many powerful people in West Africa view what I do as a political act, and therefore I'm interested in political office. That's not the case at all. I'm not. I'm not interested in being in politics. But it's hard to get anybody to convince or to convince them otherwise that I'm not, and that creates a lots of roadblocks and extreme amount of challenges. There's no every other month, we're getting audited on taxes. There's some issue to be dealt with. There's bank account that will be blocked. There's always something, you know.
So some people look at what you're doing as an act of sort of political um, an endeavor, but you don't. It's part of what you're sort of here, and your mission in life is to do. So regardless of what happens, you're sort of committed to the cause, or you are committed to the cause.
Yes, and it definitely, and I think is, you know, I will often say that nothing you can't price or put the price to human life. But I believe to myself that what I'm doing is worth whatever the outcome may be, because I have seen people that because of Alaffia, they're able to have opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise, or they didn't die. Look, we talk about mothers that would have otherwise died, and their life. One five children born in central bar of Togo today is paid for because of Alaffia. So I have to believe that it's worth it, whatever the cost may be. Even for me, on a daily basis. My children used to tell me that they used to be quite upset with me that I'm never home, and I used to tell them, I said, "Well, you have a roof over your head, you have food. That's more than what I had. You should be okay." But now I understand that everybody has to pay a price. Even they had to pay a price for this mission. Now I have their father home. When my mother died, I wrote a letter.
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, and I think one of the questions I have for you is what advice you would give to someone else interested in starting a business with a focus on social and environmental impact, like in you know this way of having this triple bottom line business where you are taking care of the people, you're making profit, but you also have this this impact. And one of the things that sticks out to me is like a lot of entrepreneurs today, they're looking to make a quick buck. They're looking to have a quick exit. They want to be a serial entrepreneur. They want to do one thing and then a couple years later do another thing and then 5 years later do another thing, and you stuck at it in for 20 years, and that type of commitment is more rare in today's sort of entrepreneurship landscape. And even when people are thinking about building a business for good, they're usually not really willing to do it for the next 20 years.
Yeah, and you can't blame them, John. The journey can be pretty rough, so you can't blame them. No, if there's an advice, I think for me is people can always make money, and the idea of just making money is cannot be all that we live for. And the clear advice will be then what? What it is that I think any entrepreneur, and particularly in the social enterprise world, you have to think what do you feel deep in your guts, and what is it in your own community? It doesn't matter if it's America or it's in Africa, wherever it is. What is it in your community that you want to resolve or solve for? And I think if and it sometimes it can be personal, something personal that happened to you. I know we all have terrible experiences in our lives, and maybe we don't want it to repeat to another person. So just pick one of those things and try to solve it. Because if you do, that's one less thing that humanity have to endure. And imagine that contribution to humanity if you just solve that one. So I think the advice that you got to feel in your guts. If you can't feel in your guts, then make sure that when you do it, it's not all for the money. And I know that's a bit difficult to comprehend. And the reason why I say it has to come from your gut, and it needs to be something that it means something to you beyond money, is because when the thing gets hard, when you feel like it can't go one more day, that you want to go under the bed and lay there and give up because you cannot, because in your conscience is a commitment now. So you have to plow through it. And the process of plowing through it leads to success and leads to other souls being free.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you know finding that integration though is pretty hard in a for-profit business. Like a lot of people are like, okay, I'll do my for-profit business, I'll work in investment banking and finance, I'll be a lawyer, I'll do what I need, I'll be a doctor, I'll do what I need to do to make money. And then I'll donate my time, I'll donate resources. So how did you decide that you weren't going to do this as a nonprofit, but instead you were going to do it as a for-profit enterprise that then has this give back arm? How did you make that decision?
Yeah. I, well, for one, I didn't think I had a choice, right? I didn't think those choices were available to me. But you have to remember, for me, it was I wanted to demonstrate to the world that these different spectrums, you know, a mother like my mother in the village, I want to demonstrate to the world that that mother, the outcome of her activities can be found in Berkeley, in London, wherever it might be, that she can be part of the global fabric. And that was so important to me because I felt for a long time that the world doesn't see our women. The world doesn't see what Africa can offer aside from being taken advantage of as we know it for the last 900 years. So it was it's some essence of revolution, really. So I have to pick a revolutionary path. I couldn't go to the investment banking because that was not a revolutionary to me. Yes, you need capital, but I had to go straight to where the knowledge is and making our people proud. And I believe to me, if I was able to demonstrate to the world that those two worlds can coexist, the rich can make more money, because that's the truth. When we go to Whole Food or Target, we don't tell Target, oh, look, we're supporting women in Togo or in Ghana. No, I tell them you're going to make a lot more money if you sell our lotion. And it's true. And then that process, we're able to support ourselves back here. So it really comes down to, the dignity. I felt that the dignity is for Africans themselves to contribute to their destiny. And so the path of Africans doing that was to do what I do.
Yeah. Um, you obviously have a lot of demands on your time. You travel back and forth. You mentioned the sacrifice that your kids have endured of maybe not having you as present as they would like in order to kind of achieve this higher mission. How do you take a step back and practice self care and maintain some semblance of work life balance? Like, what do you like to do outside of your work?
The you know, I used to think a drink a glass of bottled wine would help, but that doesn't help very much. So I actually went for a whole 2 months if I had a single drip of wine. That doesn't help. No, it's not just one thing. Uh, I take a very long walk. I can easily go for 10 miles walk. And interesting enough, I like hot tubs. If it may be 80 degrees somewhere, if there's a hot tub, I'll be in it. I may be cooking myself. So I don't know if that's life balance or excessive use of energy when we're supposed to be for environment. But sometimes you do things just to be able to live on to one more day. And I think taking long walks and I like to cook actually. Cooking it helps me relax. I'm very present because lots of time I'm not present. I'm always tomorrow after tomorrow. So those things help me be present.
What do you like to cook?
I like to bake fufu. So I like to bake black eyed peas, red palm oil, and fufu is like a pound of yams, from here, from West Africa. It's essentially it's almost like a starch that has lots of fiber in it, and it's a farmer's food. And because we grew up as a farmer, I like farmer's food. So I can't go a day without eating some type of beans, really.
Um, I have a couple more questions for you, if that's okay, and then we can wrap it up, Olowo-n'djo. Do you have a couple more minutes?
Of course.
Oh yeah. So one of them is, you've done a lot in order to create economic opportunities for women in West Africa. How has this focus as a social enterprise focused on gender equality impacted your personal beliefs and attitudes towards gender roles?
Yeah. Well, that's a quite big spectrum. I have to put it in perspective. and it has to synchronize with my own community. I think that we cannot define gender equality purely on a Western perspective. I think we can have equality with our women, and it may look different from different places. But what we cannot have is where other person is being pushed down or cannot have access to certain things simply because of their gender, that whatever that may be. So I think for me, I because of purely because of what I stand for, a form of equality is not just between women and men. It's equality in all existence on Earth, right? How you treat your fellow being, you have to treat uh, the environment the same way. Anything that you engage with needs to be treated the same way. So I think it's more of a philosophy of inclusiveness and have the same love for all things you touch. And I really do. I believe my heart can handle loving everything.
And then final question for you is, you feature some unique ingredients from West Africa. Is there a particular ingredient that you find especially that you have like a obsession with or you really love?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. Obviously, or in particular, the shea butter is a key. You know, shea trees. There's nowhere else in the world that shea trees grow except the savannah of West Africa that goes below Mauritania all the way to cut across Togo, Cameroon, and to all the way to East Africa. So because we grew up eating it as a food and also use it on our skin. So I think it's something that you can use for everything, which is similar to our own black soap as well that you see in Alaffia product. Is a soap that's made out of palm kernel oil using ashes to react it and mix with shea butter. Very simple ingredient. You can use it for shampoo and you can use it for whole body wash. And I like simplicity. Right? We grew up very simple, and we got to maintain certain things very simple. I would say those are the two key ingredients or product that we have that I use every day. Then I have used since I was a kid.
Amazing. Amazing. Olowo-n'djo, I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer. As you said, we started out, you're like, that's a 10-hour story. At some point, I would love to meet you in person or come visit you in West Africa, in Ghana. Anything you'd like to leave us with before we sign off today?
No, John, I think again, similar to our beginning, I just want to commend you and express my gratitude to you for caring. And I do believe again that all of us plays an important role, and you're playing your role by getting the community to hear other ways of thinking, different models across the world that are positive. So you'll carry on your journey, and I just want to give you a thumbs up for that. But another way too is that I want to truly express my gratitude for the people of California and beyond, because when I went to UC Davis, the state of California paid for my education at the UC Davis, and then today. California and Berkeley, San Francisco area remain some of our biggest source of our income to be able to do what we do in the US and across the globe. So just give my gratitude to all the various families that have supported for 20 years. And I will pledge that I will never let them down. I will continue to fight and do everything to the best of my heart. And I will never go anywhere. So just gratitude and love.
Amen. Amen. It's been a pleasure, Alondra. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you to your team. And I hope you have a relaxing weekend full of lots of walking, cooking,
Yes, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm, I'm,
and you had one more in there. Hot tubs.
Thank you.